Welcome to Cosmic Conscious Vibration, unlocking your inner universe with me, Reverend Dr. Kimmie and Dr. Pat. Are you on a personal journey of spiritual self-discovery? We provide practical ways to connect with your higher self to live a more meaningful life while deepening your connection to source consciousness. Learn the benefits of living a more mindful existence to reclaim your personal power. Join us as we explore insights to a deeper understanding of the nature of consciousness. Learn to listen better to your intuition and your heart's desires, putting you on a path of manifesting the life you are meant to live. The Cosmic Conscious Vibration Show is your catalyst for a consciousness revolution based on universal love and oneness. It all starts now.
Yes, it does. Reverend Dr. Kimmie, look at this.
Hello, Dr. Pat.
This show. This is so important, the ego and mindfulness. And I mean, somewhere along the lines, the ego got a bad rap, but we need to straighten a few things out with that today, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
It gets a bad rap because for one, pop culture definitely has a lot to do with that. We'll just say that right here. And
yeah,
it does. But now I don't have a really ginormous ego, but ego is also helpful. It's a matter of, are you going to control your ego or rein it in, or are you just going to go on autopilot and act out every egoic impulse, every fear, every worry, every scenario in your head? So if you are able to not do that and go within more, you will control the ego so it's working for you, not you working for it, basically.
Yeah. And I love this show today because, part of this is beyond a conversation of how evil the ego is. Look, we need it. And sometimes we see it in some people more than others, but then we make a judgment about that.
Right.
But let's talk about the role that the ego does play, because it plays a very important one, either to help us or to our detriment.
Right. Now, involves recognizing that the ego or the individual, sense of self-importance and separation from others, it's a construct of the mind, for one. But if you are in control of your ego, because you need to know, for example, I am light, I am God. All these things isn't important in the sense that you understand your connectedness to spirit, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But if you're like, I am the most beautiful thing on the planet and no one else, you're getting too full of yourself. You're getting too big for your britches, so to speak.
I used to hear that all the time from Mama.
Me too.
Mama Doris. She would say to us girls, she'd say, y'all girls, you are getting too big for your britches and I am not buying you new underwear.
So, exactly. And so, and even, with those type of sayings, that's our family, our elders who've been around the block trying to rein in and get that so you can have it work for you. Because you have to understand that you are important. But you also need to understand that not everything that's going on in your head is important. So when you are so attached to being above everyone else, you are actually, you're separating yourself from other people in a negative way.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to separate yourself from people in a positive way, you're not really separating yourself. You're understanding that we're all connected. And you're understanding that what I have to do, what my mission is, what my journey is different from yours. And I'm important and you are important, but it all works together in the grand scheme of everything. Yeah. So we're all working together unwillingly sometimes, so.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because let's just get into a deeper dive of this, especially when it comes to mindfulness. I don't want to confuse people. Confidence is not an over challenging ego. I just want to be very clear because this is sometimes confusing. I don't care like what you look at. You may look at some very confident people in business. And I will say women run into a problem with this, especially with other women, because confident women, and yes, I'm going to make a global statement right now, but don't email me. Don't email me on this. Okay. This is a fact. We know this. Go back and read Backlash by Susan Faludi, and you'll hear the whole story. But here's what happens. And it happens in different ethnicities in different ways. But when women show up positively, confidently, however you want to call it, there's something that goes on where we look at that and we say, she is so full of ourselves. Here's what I want you to know. I want to thank Caitlin Clark, basketball player, for changing the dime on this and showing us what confidence looks like. And all of these other women that got drafted in the women's basketball league. What are we seeing now more? What are we honoring more? And what are we looking at? Because this is a very important role of an ego. I don't know about you. I play a sport, and if I don't show up confidently, I'm going to tell you I am milquetoast to my opponent.
Right. And with women, it's a societal thing too. We are told to be seen and not heard growing up, and especially older generations, not so much as now, but we've got that in the back of our head. And our ego is also fed by the belief systems that we are absorbed as we grow up. So even if we're not, it's like that imposter syndrome. A lot of them have imposter syndrome. They can have degree after degree and have all the smarts in the world and get in a room with a bunch of people and feel small.
Yeah.
And then if they do feel confident, like you said, have that confidence, like I know my stuff. I can say what I need to say and they're going to listen. The backlash to people who like men or even other women who fall into that bashful, like don't want to be confident category, they look at it as, oh, she's just full of ego. And that's not true. To be fair, the people that you see that have tons of false bravado and confidence probably are the most insecure people you will ever meet.
Please say it again. False bravado.
Yeah.
False. See, we're not talking about Cesar Millan when he talks about calm confidence, or Sarah Main, who talks about conscious confidence. We're not talking about that. But we get that confused with ego. And let's try not to confuse it. The ego has a role which enables us, right? Reverend Doctor, it enables us to stand in the truth of who we are.
Yes. You have to stand in the truth of who you are. You can't be off your authentic self if you're too busy worried about the next person or what they feel about you or how they take what you say, because that's a perception. You're letting your mind make a perception that they're thinking about you before anything even happened in those situations. And, it's a fear of insufficiency,
It is.
And it gets this bad rap because, people just think, okay, they're confident and it over. But like I said, false bravado. If you are overconfident, 9 times out of 10, you are, faking it till you make it is one thing. But there are people that are, a little bit too on the scale and too on the nose. But when you have the right amount of confidence in yourself and you've done the work to get in touch with who you truly are, you're in touch with your higher self, you've contemplated things, you've done the soul searching, and you get to a place where you know who you truly are, and then people are, scared to express who they truly are. Don't be scared of that. That is the confidence you need to succeed in life. You need that, because if you're not going to believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you? You know? So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the tag team that we don't talk about a lot. Ego development and spiritual development. You see, we don't talk about these two beautiful sisters working together. When they work together, ego development and spiritual development, it's almost as if, from where you sit, I want to ask you, it's almost as if they can't be without the other for balance,
No,
right?
no.
And what do I mean by that? We've heard the term spiritual bypass,
Oh,
where everything, it's all good, everything's all good. Oh, really? The car is like on your foot right now. Yes, it's all good. And the ego says, hello, tell them to back the car up. See, we need a couple of different components, but we don't know how to use them. Is that where mindfulness comes in?
yeah, because when you're using mindfulness and meditation practices, it helps quiet the mind and reduce the identification with the ego and get you more to identify with who you are. So that's what I was saying earlier about
Mm-hmm.
how you have to do the inner work. And so, like, for example, in Buddhist traditions, it's that whole thing about non-attachment. You don't need to be attached. Nothing is permanent. Nothing has permanence. And but you, as who you are, is who you are no matter what. But you don't have to attach yourself to everything out there and think of it constantly. When you've done the inner work, you're focused inward, not outward. And
Yeah.
like a lot of spiritual, like Buddhism, because basically it's creating your own suffering as well.
Yeah. So interesting. We're talking about this. I had a little situation pop up
Mm-hmm.
with the people that are our administrative corporate. We hire people to manage our corporate admin, let's just call it, because honestly,
Yeah.
I do not want to do that job. And you trust them to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when something goes wrong, and this is what I want to ask you about, fear can fuel a very frustrated and fanatical ego, can't it?
Fear is, I love the acronym. I don't know who come up with this, but fear is just false, you know, I think accusations, being real or something like that. I can't probably mess it up, but it's fake.
I get it. It's
Yeah,
fake. Yeah.
it's fake. And by recognizing how the egos influence your fear through your thoughts, your behaviors, you can begin to transcend those fears because you can take a deeper look at what are you really afraid of. Because honestly, we're all having a spiritual existence. We're all souls, we're all light. And the ego, from a spiritual perspective, if you are thinking about your connectedness to everything, right? When we were separated from source, okay, that's where that ego comes from. We're in this vibration down here, bumping around, learning lessons. The whole point of being here is to learn lessons, and that has to do with karma and all that jazz. But you needed that separation of self so you could learn the lessons. But that's also kind of like this imprint. I feel like it's this constant needing to feel whole. And when we are trapped in our ego, we're forgetting that we're here to learn the lessons, and we're stuck in fear of everything. And really, what is there to fear? There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Exactly. So
I
you
love
have to
that you're
dissolve
talking
that.
about this. Look, I love that you're talking about this. If you look at my back wall, I'm not sure how much the audience is going to see, but if you look at my back wall, you'll see a couple of things. Like right behind me, that's a beautiful watercolor painting that my acupuncturist's mom created for me. But if you look at the glasswork, I created that glasswork. The one at the top, not this side, that one, the top one, I did that and called it the ego. See, I did this glasswork, but I did
Uh-huh.
that one and I called it the ego. And I remember where I was in my life when that happened, though. And it's such a mistake. It was such a mistake for me. But then when I look at it now every day, I see it. What I was trying to say about where I was in that point in my life is I felt broken. I felt scattered.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did the art piece, it came out beautiful. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it wasn't this mess of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, down below it is a Like, a turkey bone, like when you break the turkey bone, that's my
Yeah.
lucky.
Wish
But
to,
you
wish
see,
them.
yeah. So, but here we are. And this is the most important part of this. I want to talk about how brilliant the ego is when it is touched by the spiritual nature of things. I want to talk with you about that because it's hard for me to separate the two because we are both. And yet we just have come not to honor the ego. We've also come not to honor the importance of spiritual practice. Do you think?
Well, yes and no. I think it's one of those yes or no questions
Yes,
because
it is.
um, a lot of spiritual teachers, and I don't consider myself a teacher. I'm just a girl who took some classes and have been like this my whole life. I don't try to put guru label on me at all. But a lot of these spiritual teachers mention ego dissolution or dissolving your ego completely. And I feel that they lack that is, you don't want to do that. You
No.
need your ego. Ego needs to work for you. And letting go of that deep attachment to the personal identity of who you are and experiencing a sense of oneness with the universe is the goal. Yeah. That's where that separation anxiety comes from. We want to be whole again. So there is that spiritual component, but by transcending the ego, we can move towards a state of just greater peace, compassion. We start to feel, not just know, but feel in your heart chakra, all in here, that interconnectedness. Sometimes when I sit and meditate and I'm just, buzzing or vibrating, you feel that gratitude for just being here, and you can feel it in your body. And I think that's important. And also with the ego, you can feel when it might be a little running away, it's up to you to pull yourself back, find that present moment stillness, and get back to center. So yeah.
I want to talk about this non-attachment. It's like the glass piece up on my wall. I mean, you take a look at that, and for some people, I'm always fascinated what people want to tell me it means, right? Every day. But at some level, it may look like there's a scatteredness, but everything is connected. I want to get back to something you said. It's so important, non-attachment. But before we do, can you take a moment and let folks know, how do they work with you? How do they find out about you? All of the above.
Yes, all of my stuff, be it my classes or any of that stuff, is on my website. It's reverendrkimmie.com. So it's just REVDRKIMMIE.com. And all of my stuff are there. I'm always adding things these days too. So it's all there.
I love it. Look, non-attachment is something that you mentioned throughout this, and I want to spend the rest of the time talking about it because it's so important. Relates. It's important, but it's so misunderstood. And also, we also throw terms around like ego death or something like that. But non-attachment is confused with not having expectations, and that is not what we're saying.
Right. Non-attachment is basically a state of not clinging to objects or outcomes or experiences. That's cut and dry. It's understanding that, this outcome can happen. We all talk about timelines. Okay, one decision may send you into this way, and one decision may send you that way. That's great, but you don't have to be attached to any of those decisions. That's really what that's about. You need to appreciate the experience and not try to predict the future to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to control you can't control it like that. The universe doesn't work that way. But it really, like with, what is the word? I think it's called dukkha in Buddhism. It just means reducing desires and cravings. So you're really just trying to, mind you, we all know that there's going to be outcomes. If you're putting in the effort and you're working towards a goal, that's inspired action. You are inspired by what your purpose is, and you are acting on it, be it affirmations mixed with actual things you're doing in the physical world. You're doing that, right? But if you are trying to control everything and go, okay, I'm going to go here, 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 that's where you start getting all muddy, because you're attaching your hopes and dreams to one particular outcome. And if that goes the wrong way, you're back to square one, being sad and mopey about it. So don't do that.
Yeah, but this is so cool. What you're really talking about is all of the tens of thousands of thoughts that go through our mind. And we don't put that together, do we? I mean, we don't really understand what fuels all of this.
Right.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this and beliefs. I mean, I was so thrilled to get to a point where I could apply to doctoral programs. I wasn't attached to which school, right?
Right.
And in the end, after 35 rejections, I did get put on a waiting list. And when I look back at it, it was, dang, that was my first choice. And I asked myself, I said to Linda, maybe we shouldn't apply it to the other. And I forget what Linda's answer was to that. But it was, you looked at the world of possibilities. And I think we're talking about that. And the ego does know how to maneuver. But tell us about this idea of thoughts and beliefs, and what do they do? What is their role in reference to ego?
Well, your thoughts and your beliefs can keep you stuck, for one.
I do know that.
Right? They can keep you stuck. And when it comes down to your ego, there's a lot of fear that could be in that. Like if you would have been fearful of even pursuing the doctorate, you would have been frozen in that fear, and your ego would just help you, because your ego also has that mechanism built in, and just like our beliefs and everything, of self-preservation. Protect you from all the bad boogeymen out there. Oh, you might not get that. Oh, don't try. So that's where that boogeyman, I call it boogeyman syndrome, because it's like you're scared of everything, and then you end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so with it being your belief system, you've got beliefs that are ingrained in you from when you were growing up. You've got beliefs that you have created because of a specific outcome of a specific thing that put a little, we shouldn't do that ever again, checkbox, right? So when you have those things, you're holding yourself back. So it can be helping you, protect you, or it can work in overdrive and you'll be scared of everything. So,
I mentioned, I threw a phrase out, ego death. Let's talk about that. I don't want to blow by that, because there's a concept that I think we should understand. Does it tie back in to the notion of spirituality? What is your belief? What's your wisdom on this?
On the ego death?
Yeah.
Well, personal experience. Everyone's going to go through it eventually. And if you don't at this particular moment, maybe it's not your lifetime to go through a spiritual awakening, to be fair. But it is a lot of recognizing of your darker self, or they call it shadow work sometimes. A lot of times it's a recognition of recognizing things that are affecting you that you don't really know are affecting you until you do the contemplation and the work to figure it out. So yes, there is a little bit of an ego death, because you can go from an inflated ego or an overpronounced ego, and you kind of working inner outer. So you're like, okay, so this is what's happening. Maybe that's not. And so you start to realize that not everything it's not all that important.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. Like sometimes there are things that I felt like were so important in my life, and that's definitely ego driven. Now I'm like, meh. So it really is about, there is a little bit of a death there. It's a matter, I think it's more of a rebalancing, to be fair.
I want to ask you about this because I think this was one of the greatest challenges for me, especially with
Mhm.
33 years in addiction and recovery.
Mm.
And it took me a while to really get to the punchline. But I wanted to ask you a question about spiritual growth.
Mhm.
And I think this is the question that I want to ask. I want to know how the ego either supports our spiritual growth or may get in the way, because
Oh,
I think this is so important to really bring to the surface here before the show ends.
yeah. Well, basically, achieving a balance between a healthy ego and the pursuit of like unity consciousness, for example, it involves integrating the strengths of the individuality of you with the wisdom of the interconnectedness of everything, right? That awareness, right? So when you are fostering a more conscious and harmonious relationship between the self and the universe, I feel like just myself, I feel like it kind of balances itself out on its own. It because you start to realize things that you wouldn't have realized them unless you just
Yeah.
stop and moment and look and think and listen to your soul.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really a balancing act.
Well, I mean, I think for everyone listening, we have to understand the consciousness path here and the
Mm-hmm.
unity consciousness path.
Mm-hmm.
The other day I got asked, well, I didn't get asked, I had a comment made. I was out at an event and I was speaking at an event and we were talking about our vision to grow the network and what our plan was, concrete plans.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody walked up at the end and said, how is it phrased? Aren't aren't you all enough the way you are? Okay, we could do a show on that. Our next show needs to be about aren't you like enough the way you are? And I just looked at it, I said, what would it mean? I mean, do you really need to grow and put the addiction channel and this channel up? And I said, I'm being guided. My whole team is being guided. And when I'm guided by a power, whatever you want to call it, power greater than
Mm-hmm.
yourself, the God of my understanding, it doesn't matter. But when
Right.
you're guided or when I'm guided, this is what I said to the person. When I'm guided, I've learned in my life to follow it because when I have
Yeah.
not followed that guidance, I ended up in a gutter in Providence on Cape Cod. And I said, I am not repeating that. But you see, let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about that unity consciousness and what it beckons us to do.
Well, unity consciousness really is a matter of understanding the interconnected of everything. And I mean, spiritual growth often involves transcending the limitations imposed by the ego. So your ego is putting kind of a all stop in there, right? And you don't want that. You want to be able to be liberated, and following your intuition is key. Like you said, you're being guided. It doesn't matter what you call it. You're still following your internal guidance system.
Yes.
So, with that being said, it's like it's so important to understand that. And once you get that and you start to feel that and you
Yep.
listen to that, you're all good.
Oh, well, that says it all. Reverend Dr. Kimmie, please, one more time, website. And I have a funny feeling we're going to do the Not Enough show next.
Not enough, right?
How do we find out about you?
Yes. It's reverendrkimmie.com. So REVDRKIMMIE.com.
Thank you so much for today. Thank you for helping us understand this. And thank you all. Please get a hold of Reverend Dr. Kimmie if you have any questions about this, because I know how confusing this can sometimes be. And for all of you out there, understand that you, as well as Dr. Kimmie and I, we have the ability to be guided. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Cosmic Conscious Vibration, Unlocking Your Inner Universe. I'm Dr. Kimmie, and along with Dr. Pat, we have been discussing the nature of consciousness for ways to deepen your connection to Source. Join us on the second Tuesday of each month at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio, as we provide the information to assist you on your personal spiritual journey. You play an important role in the interconnectedness of all things. For more information on the benefits of living a more mindful existence, please visit www.revdrkimmie.com. That's ReverendDrKimmie.com.